Did you know that the fall of Rome didn't happen in a single day? It took centuries. And the reasons why? They're way more complex and honestly, way more interesting than what you learned in school. In this video, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating stories you've never heard. One that shaped every civilization that came after it. Stay tuned because this changes everything. Welcome back, history enthusiasts. Today, we're exploring the fall of Rome, one of the most pivotal moments in human civilization. Now, when I say fall of Rome, most people think of the Roman Empire collapsing overnight, right? Wrong. This is where most historians get it completely backwards. The truth is, Rome didn't fall because of one catastrophic event. It fell because of a perfect storm of political corruption, economic collapse, military overstretching, and cultural fragmentation. This pivotal moment shaped societies, cultures, and the world as we know it today. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this matters and how it directly connects to our modern world. You'll see parallels in our current civilization that are honestly a bit unsettling. So, let's rewind to around 27 BCE when Rome was at its peak and trace the path that led to its eventual transformation into medieval Europe. Before the fall happened, the world looked incredibly different. Rome in 27 BCE wasn't just a city. It was the most powerful empire on earth. Picture this. Augustus Caesar had just consolidated power after the civil wars that nearly destroyed the Republic. The empire stretched from Spain to Syria, from the Rhine River to North Africa. Over 70 million people lived under Roman rule. Rome's success wasn't an accident. It was built on several key foundations. First, military dominance. The Roman legions were the most advanced fighting force the world had ever seen. They weren't just soldiers. They were engineers, administrators, and the backbone of imperial expansion. A single Roman legion could defeat armies 3 times its size. These weren't mercenaries. These were professional soldiers trained to perfection. Second, economic prosperity. Rome controlled the Mediterranean trade routes. Silk from China, spices from India, grain from Egypt, all flowed through Roman ports. This created massive wealth. The average Roman citizen enjoyed a standard of living that wouldn't be matched again in Europe until the 1800s. Think about that. 1,400 years of decline. Third, engineering marvels. The Romans built aqueducts that carried fresh water across hundreds of miles. They constructed roads so well built that some are still used today, nearly 2,000 years later. They created the Colosseum, the Pantheon, structures so advanced that medieval builders couldn't even figure out how they were made. This infrastructure wasn't just impressive. It was the glue that held the empire together. Fourth, legal systems. Roman law was revolutionary. It established the concept that laws should be written, clear, and apply equally to all people. Our modern legal systems are built on Roman principles. This gave people confidence in the system and made governance actually work. Fifth, cultural unity. Latin was the lingua franca. Whether you were in Britain or Egypt, educated people spoke Latin. You could travel across the empire and people would understand you. This created a shared identity that transcended local cultures. By the 2nd century CE, under emperors like Trajan and Marcus Aurelius, Rome reached its territorial maximum. The empire covered about 5 million square kilometers. It had a population larger than the entire population of North America today. The military had over 450,000 soldiers. Rome seemed unstoppable. Senators were still wealthy and powerful, though they'd lost real political authority. The emperor ruled, but the facade of the republic still existed. People generally accepted this system because it worked. There was peace, prosperity, and the empire seemed eternal. But here's what historians rarely talk about. The seeds of Rome's destruction were already planted right there, in the height of power. They were just invisible. This is where everything starts to fall apart. The year is 235 CE. Emperor Severus Alexander is murdered. But here's the thing, he's not the only one. In the next 50 years, there are over 50 claimants to the throne. Some rule for only a few months. One lasted just 14 days. The empire fragments into civil war. Soldiers are no longer fighting foreign enemies. They're fighting each other to put their general on the throne. This is absolute chaos. The military, which was Rome's greatest strength, becomes its greatest weakness. During this period, something critical happens. Tax revenue collapses. Why? Because the empire is fighting itself. Armies are marching through provinces, destroying the infrastructure that generates wealth. Farms are burned. Trade routes are disrupted. The government tries to replace lost revenue by debasing the currency, adding less precious metal to coins. Inflation spirals out of control. An average Roman worker's purchasing power drops by 60% in a single decade. Here's something crucial that textbooks gloss over. Rome's economy was never designed for stagnation. It depended on constant expansion. New territories meant new resources, new wealth, new tax revenue. But by 235 CE, Rome has stopped expanding. In fact, it's contracting. The army costs money, enormous amounts. A single legion costs about 1 million denarii per year to maintain. Rome has 33 legions at this point. That's 33 million denarii annually just for soldiers' wages and equipment. When tax revenue drops, something has to give. The government cuts military spending, which means soldiers don't get paid. Unpaid soldiers stop defending the borders. The barbarian invasions intensify because, frankly, the border defenses are crumbling. But wait, there's a deeper economic problem that's almost never discussed. Rome's economy was based on slave labor. As the empire stopped expanding, the slave trade dried up. Where do slaves come from? Captives. No expansion means no new slaves. Labor becomes scarce. Productivity drops. Economic output declines further. Meanwhile, the wealthy elite hoards money. Instead of reinvesting in business and infrastructure, they buy land and hoard precious metals. They see the system failing and prioritize personal wealth over the collective good. Sound familiar? By the late 3rd century, the Roman military is a shadow of its former self. Here's why. First, the recruitment pools are drying up. Young Roman men don't want to be soldiers anymore. Military service was once an honor. Now it's seen as a death sentence. The empire starts recruiting barbarians, Goths, Vandals, Germanic tribes. These soldiers have loyalty to their commanders, not to Rome. Second, the legions stop being mobile fighting forces and become more like frontier garrisons. They're strung out along thousands of miles of borders, holding the line against increasingly aggressive barbarian confederations. Third, the military loses its technological advantage. Without the wealth to maintain infrastructure, weapons and armor quality decline. The weapons that once made Rome unstoppable become outdated. Meanwhile, barbarian warriors develop new military tactics. They learn how to fight Rome's way, and they adapt faster. By 378 CE, at the Battle of Adrianople, a combined Germanic force under Alaric actually defeats a Roman military contingent. For the first time in centuries, a barbarian army beats Rome in conventional battle. The myth of Roman invincibility is shattered. Barbarians realize Rome can be beaten. Around 312 CE, something seismic happens. The Roman Emperor Constantine converts to Christianity. This seems positive, spiritual renewal, right? But it has unintended consequences. Christianity divides the empire into new factions. Theological disputes become political ones. Should Christ have one nature or two? This sounds abstract, but these disputes literally tear the empire apart. You have the Arian controversy, the Nestorian controversy, and believers willing to go to war over these theological points. More importantly, Christianity changes the cultural meaning of military service. Christian doctrine emphasizes peace, forgiveness, and the afterlife. The martial virtues that made Rome great, courage, honor, willingness to die for Rome, start losing cultural prestige. Additionally, the wealthy increasingly donate vast estates to the church instead of investing them in business. Church landholdings grow to enormous proportions. Wealth flows out of the economic system into religious institutions. The church provides welfare and community, so people are okay with this. But economically, it's a drain on productivity. This is where the narrative gets interesting. Most people think barbarians invaded because they were savage and wanted to destroy civilization. Wrong. Many barbarians actually wanted to be part of Rome. See, by 375 CE, Germanic tribes are being pushed westward by a massive migration of Huns from Central Asia. These tribes don't want to invade the Roman Empire. They want refuge within it. The Visigoths send delegations to Roman authorities begging for permission to settle inside the empire's borders in exchange for military service. Rome says yes. Bad move. The Visigoths settle in the Balkans, but Roman officials treat them terribly. They cut off food supplies. They enslave Gothic women and children. They break every agreement made. In 378 CE, the Visigoths revolt. Roman Emperor Valens leads an army to crush them. He loses the Battle of Adrianople and dies in the fighting. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers die. After this, barbarian tribes pour across the borders. Not because they're invading, they're migrating. They're looking for somewhere stable to live. Rome can't stop them because the military is broken. In 410 CE, Alaric and his Visigoths actually enter Rome itself. They loot the city. It's a shock that reverberates through the civilized world. Rome, the eternal city, has been sacked for the first time in 800 years. The Western Roman Empire staggers on for another 66 years after 410 CE, but it's basically already dead. Emperors rule over smaller and smaller territories. By 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, is just a figurehead controlling only Italy. A barbarian general named Odoacer deposes him and declares himself king of Italy. The Western Roman Empire officially ends. Here's what most history classes don't mention. Rome fell partly because of climate change. Between 536–541 CE, a massive volcanic eruption, possibly in Central America or Iceland, blocks out the sun. Temperatures drop globally. Crops fail. Famine spreads across Europe and Asia. But even before this, in the 160s, 180 CE, and again in 250–262 CE, plague ravages the empire. The Antonine Plague kills millions. The Cyprian Plague does the same. These aren't small events. Some estimates suggest 25–33% of the empire's population dies. Imagine if 1/3 of America died in a decade. That's the scale we're talking about. With fewer people, less labor is available. Farms are abandoned. Tax revenue drops. The military can't recruit enough soldiers. The empire contracts in real time. The Roman government becomes hopelessly corrupt. Provincial governors rob the territories they're supposed to administer. Soldiers extort money from civilians. The tax system is so brutal and inefficient that people sometimes hide in forests rather than face tax collectors. Bribery isn't frowned upon, it's the norm. High military positions are purchased, not earned on merit. Incompetent generals command armies because they paid for their position. Military disasters become more common. Earlier I mentioned currency debasement. Let me detail this because it's crucial. In 64 CE, the denarius, Rome's basic coin, contained 50% silver. By 200 CE, it's down to 50% silver. By 270 CE, it contains only 5% silver. It's basically worthless. Imagine your dollar losing 95% of its value in 70 years. Savings are wiped out overnight. People lose confidence in the government. No one wants to accept Roman coins anymore. The monetary system essentially collapses. This forces the economy back to barter. But barter is inefficient. Large-scale trade becomes impossible. Economic activity contracts. For something to be traded, both parties must want the other's goods at the exact same time. This severely limits commerce. Rome's population declines by 60% over 2 centuries, from around 70 million to 28 million. Without people, you don't have workers, soldiers, or taxpayers. The great cities shrink. Rome itself, which had 1 million people at its peak, drops to around 20,000 by 500 CE. That's from a metropolis to a small town. Skilled workers disappear. The knowledge to build aqueducts is lost. The knowledge to create concrete, yes, Roman concrete is incredibly sophisticated, is lost. Without practitioners, professions die out. Here's what's counterintuitive. The barbarians that Rome feared weren't actually more advanced militarily. They were just more desperate, more mobile, and more unified than they'd ever been before. The Hunnic migration from Central Asia created a domino effect. Tribes that were once scattered now united because they had to. They learned Roman military tactics. Many served in the Roman military and became experienced soldiers. When Rome fell apart, these experienced warriors had the skills to carve out kingdoms. So the barbarians who took over Rome weren't savage hordes. Many were Romanized, military-trained, and pragmatic. They didn't want to destroy civilization. They wanted to inherit it. When Rome fell, the knowledge system collapsed. The great library at Alexandria had already been damaged. Latin texts that weren't copied were lost forever. Advanced engineering knowledge was forgotten. The aqueduct systems fell into disrepair. Without maintenance, they became unusable. Clean water became scarce in cities. Disease increased. Life expectancy dropped. The technological standard of living fell dramatically. Early medieval Europe is often called the Dark Ages because our records of it are sparse, but it's also called that because people's actual lives became darker, harder, and shorter. Rome's fall created the political structure of Europe. The kingdoms that replaced Rome, the Frankish kingdom, the Visigothic kingdom, the kingdom of the Ostrogoths, eventually became France, Spain, and Italy. Modern nation-states are direct descendants of post-Roman successor kingdoms. The church inherited the infrastructure that Rome built. Bishops governed cities. Monasteries became centers of learning when secular learning had almost vanished. Christian theology became the foundation of Western philosophy. Roman law, though, survived in modified form. The idea of written laws and justice systems persists through the medieval period and into the modern world. Here's where this gets uncomfortable, because Rome's fall has clear parallels to our modern world. Like Rome, we have massive inequality. The wealthy are disconnected from the consequences of economic failure. Like Rome, we have political gridlock and polarization. Republicans and Democrats can't agree on basic facts, just like Roman factions couldn't agree on anything. Like Rome, we've outsourced our military to professional soldiers. We don't have a citizen militia anymore. We have paid soldiers, some of whom are contractors. This creates loyalty to employers or generals, not to democracy. Like Rome, our infrastructure is crumbling. American roads, bridges, and water systems are aging and underfunded. Unlike Rome, we have the technology to fix this. We just lack the political will. Like Rome, we have plague and climate change. COVID-19 killed millions globally. Climate change is causing migration, resource scarcity, and geopolitical tension. Like Rome, we have cultural fragmentation. We're not united by shared values or a common language anymore. We're divided by politics, religion, and ideology. The difference is we have the historical knowledge Rome didn't. We know what happens when these factors combine. Rome didn't have this playbook. We do. The fall of Rome teaches us several crucial lessons. First, civilization is fragile. Rome seemed eternal until it wasn't. 1,000 years of dominance ended in a century of decline. We think our civilization is permanent. It isn't. Without constant maintenance, without investment, without shared purpose, systems fail. Second, economic inequality is destabilizing. When the wealth gap becomes too large, when too many people feel left behind, when the system seems rigged, people lose faith. They stop cooperating. They stop paying taxes. They stop believing in the shared project. This is how empires fall. Third, environmental factors matter. Climate, plague, and disease are forces beyond political control. But responses to these crises are political. How you distribute food during famine determines if society holds together. Rome's distribution systems failed. Ours are more robust, but not guaranteed. Fourth, military overstretching is unsustainable. Rome spent 30–40% of its budget on the military, trying to defend millions of miles of borders with smaller and smaller armies. Eventually, something breaks. Fifth, you can't fake cultural unity. Rome tried to maintain unity through force and law. But when people stop believing in the common project, no amount of force can hold it together. Belief must be genuine. So here's the truth about Rome's fall. It wasn't one catastrophic moment. It was the culmination of systematic failures: military, economic, environmental, and cultural. It was a perfect storm of bad governance, inequality, corruption, and forces beyond human control. History isn't just about the past. It's a manual for the present. Understanding Rome's fall helps us understand our own civilization. It shows us what to avoid. It demonstrates that great empires don't end with a bang. They end with a whimper, one failed decision after another. The good news? We know what went wrong. We have the historical knowledge Rome didn't have. We can see the warning signs. The question is, will we listen? If you found this video fascinating, and honestly, if you didn't, I'm shocked. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history. In the comments below, I want to know, which aspect of Rome's fall surprised you the most? Was it the economic collapse, the plague and climate change, the military deterioration, or the parallels to modern civilization? Drop your thoughts down below. I read every comment, and I'd love to hear what you think. And if you know someone who needs to understand this, whether it's a history student or someone who thinks our civilization is too big to fail, send them this video. History has lessons we all need to hear. Thanks for watching.